Says we're live. Hello.
Hello. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening to everyone who is watching. If you are watching, I don't know. Internet might be crapping out on either of our ends.
Yes, this could be a technically challenging week, I think.
This could be a very good show.
Or a very short one, whichever way you look at it.
Or a very short one. Either way, it's going to be a sexy show.
It is, yes. In fact, do we need to have some sort of rating on the show this week, like a like an 18 or something?
So hang on. So let me look at the notes, because are we describing acts? If so, then yes. If I think
I would say the second line of the second paragraph. Yes, we do. We could just take up the seatbelt analysis.
Yeah.
Why were they looking at that? Oh, it's just really funny.
Well, you know. All right, so yeah, let's
rather than that, why don't I just put satisfactorily complete?
Yes, that's a great way to put it, and family friendly.
Yes.
Maybe. I don't know. As family friendly as this show can get.
I was gonna say,
this specific episode is going to be. We try to keep the content family friendly, but this one was too good to not pass up.
Right. Okay. So yeah, no, I think. Yeah. Oh, if we get to the stuff, then that'll be quite amusing.
Yeah, I mean, we've cut out any description of specific acts.
Yes.
So I think we're okay.
Yeah, and it's podcasting anyway. We're not exactly.
Well, we have a YouTube video that goes up too, but I mean, it's not like we're going to be showing stuff in the corner of like what they're looking at here.
Are we not playing any of the videos?
No, we don't have any B-roll of this. Sorry, everyone. I'm sorry to let y'all down.
Right. Yes. Again, we are live, so we are definitely going out there, which is good.
Yeah. All right. Good.
Yeah. So I've had basically the last 2 days. My internet it's been great, and then just completely died. And then today I got thoroughly fed up of it. Rang my ISP, and they're like, "Okay, got through to a call center." And you know, like when you try to call these call centers, and you're like, "Oh, it's going to take me ages to describe." Because I've turned it back on, off and back on again. Yes, I've done a factory reset, but actually the woman who was on it she was awesome, and she was like, "Right, you've done all that stuff, and I've done a network test, and we're just going to send you a new router." And I'm like, "Great, how long is that going to be? Are we talking like weeks, months?" And she'll be with you tomorrow. So I'm hoping tomorrow morning, I get a new router, chuck it in, and it'll all be perfect straight away. Doesn't help us tonight.
No.
So, what I found that if it does basically die on me, then it is a 15-minute rebooting activity, which is a bit irritating.
It's a bit irritating. We'll fill the space and we'll edit it out. So if you're watching live, thank you. You're gonna get to see like how the sausage is made, which is why we do these live shows. Really, you don't go to NASCAR for the race; you go for the crashes.
That's true.
You don't come to Human Factors Cast live to watch a successful podcast episode. Well, you might.
You might. No,
you come to watch.
You listen to the polished version later on.
You're really getting the best of both worlds there. Especially our patrons. Our patrons get the best of every world. We do the Patreon only audio only version, full audio version. They get the full audio of the pre-show, the post-show, and whatever happens during the main show that is like.
Doesn't get edited out.
Yeah, like if we did get disconnected for 15 minutes, that'd be edited out of the final, Patreon stuff. They'll get the best possible version of all this.
Cool.
Yes. So you've had a week with internet.
Yeah.
Before this, knock on wood, like internet has been like crapping out all day, off and on, and it's been like every 10 minutes. And so we're 5 minutes into this so far.
I'll see
you.
So
I'm really hoping we'll keep an eye on the clock there and see what's going on in 5 more minutes.
But hold on, hold on. If this has been your internet's been crapping out, my internet's been crap. Oh, there's a world conspiracy thing going on, isn't there? Oh no, your internet's on its way out.
It is it?
I think so.
Oh no! Here we go. Jeez.
Oh no,
Already.
You're back. You're back.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Okay. No, I'm tentatively holding on to you there.
All right. I was about to get scared. You know what? You know what I think might be a good call for us to do tonight, Barry, is if you want to, just in case there's any issues, record a local audio file on your end. I
was just thinking the same thing.
Okay.
So let me just fire that.
I'm going to do the same over here. We'll do it for the main show. Let's not worry about the pre and post. I'm just going to check that it's work. I mean, actually, for me, it doesn't really matter too much, but I want to check because I was recording something the other day and it really messed around with the levels. Just really, the right sort of people are on board on the chatting. Oh yeah, look at that. Oh, I think it's because
you mentioned certain words in the title.
There are certain words in the title, so we're getting like. Yeah, we're definitely.
We're definitely gonna get that tonight.
Oh boy, shoot! I should have thought this through.
It's half the fun, surely.
Yeah, I mean, the emojis are half the fun. Look at that. Look. Don't go to this website, anybody, but look at these emojis.
Somebody's putting effort in there, then.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a bot.
No,
look at those emojis.
That's a real person, surely.
Yeah, surely.
Uh-huh.
So let's. I mean, those emojis are almost as impressive as that string of doctor emojis that we talked about a while back.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, we had an episode on emojis, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
Good. Yes. No. The levels seem to work for some reason because I use Hindenburg as my audio recorder, and the other day I was doing the secondary record on an interview I was doing. In fact, it was not a podcast interview; it was a work interview, user interview, and it was just blasting out the audio, and so it was just going super high, and I basically lost. It's about 2.5 hours worth of user interviews.
No.
I was absolutely gutted, but thankfully I took these. Because I still, even though I record stuff, I still take notes. Not detailed notes, but just headlines and stuff. So I had enough to bring it back to me, but I was absolutely gutted. So, but there we go. It happens to the best of us and to me.
Really, the pre and post show should be called Nick and Barry Figure Out Technical Issues.
Yeah. Technical insights.
Yeah.
Anyway, we've had a wavy emoji from Tony, who's my brother up in Northern England. So good evening, Tony.
Wavy back to you, Tony. Thank you for saying hello.
And you've done all the it came froms.
Yes, I have. Yeah, we got some good it came froms.
You're like well on the ball.
Yeah, so remember, before the show, I told you I started a new medication.
Yes.
It is my one more thing this week. I won't talk
don't
much about it, but yes, I've been productive. It's a mixed bag.
Yeah.
We'll leave it there until we get there. Yeah, so we can talk about some of these. It came from. So we're not going to jump into detail here. Our It Came From bot, by the way, Barry, is still out of commission. I tried revamping the triggers and hooks and all that stuff, and it's just not going. I don't know why it's not going. I've checked it a million times. We might have to figure out some other solution for it. Maybe once we get some more Patreons, we can start to increase the level of automation that we're doing with some of the stuff behind the scenes here. I think that's really powerful tools that we can use.
So does that mean you're going to have to divert some of that Patreon money away from the Tesla and actually to running the podcast?
Yeah. I mean, right now we're kind of recuperating podcast debt. then once we get past that point, we'll be we'll be able to. I think the first investment we're going to make is in Descript, which is a transcription software, but it also allows us to do other powerful things, right? So we're not just a podcast; we have a website, we do blogging, and so what this might be able to do is like, hey, allow our listeners to listen to a blog post that is generated by an AI that sounds like actual human beings reading something. This program in particular, Descript, is very powerful and allows you to do that. Additionally, like we could almost deepfake our own voices and do things like help with human factors minute production. If you just want to audit it and see like how that works, that is something that we can do. So that's, I think, kind of the next milestone. It'll also help with accessibility. Right now, we're using kind of cheap, free transcription software. So there's like, if you look at the transcription for last week's episode, it's actually really not great. It's it could be much better, and there are much better tools out there. This at least helps. The like cheap, easy, free one really helps with things like search engine optimization. But in terms of accessibility, we're not quite there. Yeah. Not where I want to be anyway. If somebody wanted to read the show, it's just one big blob of text right now, where this program will let us kind of say, Nick says this, Barry says this, Nick says this, Barry says that, and it'll be much more conversational of a read, which I think is good. So again, we're trying to like increase that sort of accessibility, and I think that's kind of the next target.
Who'd have thought people running a human factors blog and web podcast and stuff looking at usability of our output?
Yeah, weird, right?
Wow.
It's almost like we do this for a job.
I'd had that sort of round this week, so I've started a new role, which I think I briefly mentioned last week. But I've now got all the computing stuff that I need to do it. And I had the first conversation, because I'm the only human factors person on this job. And we had the first conversation of, well, you don't need to do all of that, do you? You can just do, because I've got some like 8 to 10 different requirements based on good practice. And like, oh, you just need to do the plan, and everything else will just sort itself, won't it? And it'll be fine. I had to give them the look over the computer. But again, I got sent a laptop, so basically corporate laptop, and joined my first Teams meeting. Brilliant. And then, but nobody can hear me because of the nature of the domain. They've silenced the mic, and so I have to use a headset. But they didn't ship a headset at the same time as they shipped the laptop. So I'm now waiting. It should come tomorrow, but it's taking like another week.
Wow.
Yeah, it's just stressful,
Yeah, I hear you.
So
more folks saying hi in the chat. You got the whole family.
Oh, the entire family's in. Good evening, Emma. Hope you've had a. So that's Emma is Tony's wife, and so that means it's a whole family experience. And Nick's camera has gone. So I'm guessing now. Oh no! Oh, this is. Oh, you're back. That's just funny. No, it is not there. So the camera's still there. So in fact, we might just have to take a photo of that just for humor value. Of there we go. Because the way that Nick's camera has stalled, obviously everybody else can see it, but Nick won't see this until he comes back into the record. But it's actually that could have paused at a much worse position. It looks very studious, and now we're left with just me. So. Yes, it'd be great to see if anybody else is there listening, and do feel free to wave and shake hand to let us know you're there. The show will be covering a rather racy subject tonight. So we are going to be talking about sex and driving, and how people have been researching that. So we should be, all being well, be going live in about 15 minutes, or going live with the recording in 15 minutes. Providing that Nick can get his internet sorted out, as much as we hope that my internet will sort itself out too. As mentioned earlier, my internet has been going out and dying on a fairly regular basis for the past 2 days. So it is, whilst there is a fix in the post, literally, there is still very much a a problem still existing where if I die and Nick dies, then it's going to be interesting to see what's left over. But I'm just trying to see. No, that's all good. Ooh. Okay. So the other interesting thing, and this is something that Restream could really help with, is what happens for all of you that are listening, whatever platform you're listening through. So we should be going through LinkedIn, we should be going through Facebook, we should be going through Twitter, we should be going through YouTube, and we should be going through Twitch as well. But Restream, the platform that we use, basically streams this out to all of them platforms simultaneously. Now, obviously, on most of them platforms, you can comment, and which is why we ask you to comment, so we know if you're talking to us, if you know you're paying attention. But when it brings it in, it just brings it in as a single stream. So we get to see all the comments, which is why we can't type comments back. We'll talk back to you rather than do anything else. Why would I want to check my master sock? I would strip it back to bare copper if it was copper, but it's fiber, so I'm not doing that. We have fiber to the house, not fiber to the cabinet. So the problem isn't this side. There's plenty of problems going on with routers of the manufacturer here in the UK, and it seems that we've got a combined issue with not only with whatever is wrong with my router itself, but also they're putting us to digital voice. So taking away the actual usual landline that runs alongside, we're going to go for an entirely combined thing, which is, I think they're rolling that out in the next, couple of weeks. So they're doing a bit of a, I believe they're doing network testing and transition, and that there's something in my router which will do that, because funny enough, we use a lot of data. So we shall see how that goes. So we are just waiting to see if Nick's going to make a reappearance, because whilst I can do a fair bit of it, in fact, the show, I can do all the show. Who needs Nick around to do any of that? Oh, he's back now, darn it. Well, but he's not actually saying anything yet, so that's a bonus. You just get to look at him instead. No voice, no sound. No sound at all. Still no sound. Oh, this is going to be one of those evenings. No, still no sound. No sound. I presume you can hear me, but no, we can't hear you. Yeah, no. Yo, well, of course you can hear me. I'm awesome. Sounds really good. But unfortunately, you're just not there, dude. Oh, and see. For those of you who are listening, then Nick's just had to. Oh no!
All right. How about now?
Yeah. Oh, we can hear your dulcet tones.
Okay, great. All right. So let's hope everything's figured out by now. I don't know. This is gonna be a fun one. Oh, boy.
And I thought it'd be my internet was going to cause all the problems.
Look, this is it. This is why you come to the live shows, because this is this is terrifying.
This is how it gets.
Yeah. Oh, we have Katie in the chat. Awesome. Thank you for joining us, Katie. Please help us out here. If you got anything fun to talk about, send it our way.
Katie's come in, and that means we've got a grown up in the room.
Yes.
Is she here just to keep us behaved?
Yes, we have to be behaved. Yeah. So anyway, what was I talking about before I dropped?
I don't know. So long ago.
Yeah, I know, right?
You having a good week having an up and down week this week, but you're going to talk about that at your as your one more thing.
Oh, right. Yes. The pills.
Pills, and we were saying hello to my family. In fact, yes, that was it. My family came in and you ran away.
Right.
I was insulted. The family was insulted.
Oh no.
we all took it personally. So.
I've insulted the whole family. This is not great. Barry, please apologize on my behalf if they're still somehow on the call, on the watching. They're still viewing. I'm deeply sorry for my actions. I really regret everything.
You let yourself down. You've let the podcast down. You've let me down.
Okay. So I do have I do have something I'd like to talk about here in the pre-show.
Cool.
So really quick, Katie. Nick has been disowned by Barry's family. I don't know if I was ever owned to begin with. Adoptive
Where's your
podcast.
Your mum hasn't rocked her.
What's that?
Your mum hasn't rocked her. Where is she?
I don't know. She usually joins us. I don't know. She's probably on the freeway somewhere, really, right now. So I had the displeasure. I don't know. I was listening to right-wing radio before I got on this. And there's a reason for it. So the local candidate for our representative has crossed the aisle, or I guess the two of the local candidates for representation in my area have they were doing a debate on a right-wing radio podcast. Anyone who's listened for a long enough time knows my politics. Try to keep it off the show, but occasionally I think doing what's right for humans often overlaps with progressive policy, and so it's really hard to avoid that sometimes. And so anyway, I was listening to this debate, and it was just so draining because of the way they were framing the questions and the way that they were sort of asking I don't know. Framing questions is everything. And when you lead somebody or lead an audience to believe that one thing is true when you're asking somebody something, it really upsets me. But I am happy to report that Barry's #1 fan is in fact here watching us live.
That's good. I was feeling somewhat neglected. That she wasn't there. So great to see you here.
Yes. Now we truly have the whole family here watching. Yes. So I'm hoping that I haven't seen any issues on my end. Hopefully you've been able to hear me this entire time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Fantastic.
So you've been doing the whole right-wing politics thing.
No, I've not been doing right-wing politics. I just listened to one radio show with a debate with the candidate that I am hoping wins in our district. Although I'm in kind of a what we call here in the States a purple district, which is where it can flip-flop, and that it's really weird, the politics of my area. So we're technically a suburb of Portland, but we're in a different state than Portland. So Portland politics don't carry over. It's more Washington politics, but the area in which I'm in, outside of this one suburb, really, or I guess maybe two city suburbs of Portland, is very rural. And so you have this really progressive kind of suburban population, and then everyone else is kind of on the way other side. And so it makes this area purple, and oftentimes everyone out in the rural areas is enough to kind of counteract the couple suburbs here. Yeah, but I don't know. This area's seen a lot of growth, and I'm hoping that we'll get a flip here later this year for the midterms.
Cool, that's exciting.
Yeah,
well, we've got our elections coming up next. Basically the start of May. So we've got.
How is that going?
It was going because I'm standing as a candidate, so that's going to be exciting. Which was all going really well, got leaflets and all that sort of stuff. But then obviously last week came down with COVID, and so I haven't been able to do any leafleting, no door knocking. So I feel like just as I was getting going, I've been just basically put back in my box a bit. And so I'm hoping that this weekend we can get out, and because it's not really so much about for me about which way people vote, because obviously there's loads of different reasons why people vote for who they vote for, etc., etc. It's just talking to people. It's just really nice just to be able to engage with people and sort of, because I'll be talking about my very small area as such, and it's like, what do you want to see? What do you want to what do you want the future of this place to be?
Right. This is very local politics, right, that you're talking about here. Like very hyper local.
Yeah, absolutely right. So it's county council elections. So I guess one below the that one level below the parliamentary for us. So the division that I'll be looking at is relatively small. So it's kind of like where I like working. It's because you can really make a difference to people's lives. I've stood as a as parliamentary candidate before and things like that. The whole campaigning mechanism, the whole human behavior thing just gets so fascinating from when you're inside the bubble and you're seeing the whole attitudes to things. Like, you can put a leaflet through somebody's door and that leaflet has got about 7 seconds of life from the time it takes you to take it out the out the letterbox and put it into the bin, and things like that. And trying to explain to people that you can't write War and Peace on these things, and seeing how people engage with it. There's a whole lot of it that I just find thoroughly fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, you and I have talked a million times about messaging and how, like, I am so keen on messaging because you really do only have a couple words to either convince somebody of something, which in your case is vote for Barry. And it's like, what do you put in that message that says vote for me? I'm what? I'm going to represent you in the best way possible. Like, okay, how?
I'm a nice guy. Yeah. It's it's interesting. There's a whole lot of we talk about what pledges you're going to do, and it's like, well, pledges are almost only as important as the first 3 words of the pledge, because if you don't basically knock them between the eyes of that, and it doesn't matter what side of the politics you're coming from, it's that whole, how do you get a message across to somebody who is their gut reaction. Because the way that we talk about politics and politicians and all that sort of stuff, the first reaction to anybody, you knock on the door or anything like that, they don't want to talk to you, because no matter what time you knock on the door, it's the wrong time. So how do you convince them you've got about 2 seconds, maybe 3 seconds at a push, to convince them to actually not just give you the answers that will get you away from the door as quickly as possible, but to actually engage with you a bit. And there's so many different we could almost do an entirely different podcast on the sort of reactions I've had on doorsteps and some of the things you see. Some people are just incredible.
I mean, like here's the thing for me is, like, if a member of the opposite party came to my door, no way, right? Like, I would not sit there and talk to them because I'm so polarized in my way of thinking, right? And I'm sure this is on the other side too, that, like, there's nothing that you can do or say from that other perspective to convince me to vote otherwise, because I know your thoughts and beliefs are not in line with my politics. Now, at a local level, it's much different. Like, I don't know if it's nonpartisan in your I mean, like, it depends on the county and the city here in the States, but sometimes it's nonpartisan, and that really helps with kind of like evaluating the people because of what they want to do for the local elections, right? The school boards. Are you going to get the person who's gung-ho on banning books? Or are you going to get the person that's, like, genuinely interested in talking with parents and teachers and getting the best curriculum out there for students and making sure that learning is fun and easy for everyone? Like, I don't know. It put labels on them too, and I think that helps out.
Yeah, it does. It's interesting. When you've got different, you've got left, right, and then, because this is the first time I've actually stood here in Wales, and so you've got nationalism as well, which plays a huge part. So it's going to be an exciting 4.5 weeks now for the election. So
yay, excitement! Speaking of excitement, we're about to talk about a very sexy topic. So please stick around.
I'm going to get through this. I'm going to get through this without laughing. Do you think?
You know what, Barry? Put on your most professional face. Why don't you go ahead and start recording on your local end now, And for everyone else watching, please stick around with us. We're going to take a quick, 20-second break, and we'll be back to start the show. It's going to be a good one. Stick around. We'll be right back after this.
Welcome to Human Factors Cast, your weekly podcast for human factors, psychology, and design.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Human Factors Cast. This is episode 239. We're recording this episode live on March 24th, 2022. I'm your host, Nick Roome, joined today by Mr. Barry Kirby.
And good evening. How are you tonight?
Good evening, Barry. I'm good. We're going to see if technology issues are good, too. But technology issues aside, we do have a great show for you tonight. We're going to be talking about sex, not biological, the act of, as a form of distracted driving. And later, we'll be answering some questions from the community about needing good handwriting skills in UX, coping with job rejections after receiving positive feedback, and we'll discuss the merits of having a research portfolio. But first, some quick programming notes and a community update here. Barry, on your show this week, you dropped a new episode on 1202 podcast, right? Our sister podcast. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we dropped that, and it was all about musculoskeletal health and an app that will help us do that. Not only help you keep good musculoskeletal health, but actually if you have an injury, help you recover from it. And that's proving really popular already. Lots of really good feedback from people who have found that it's, just talking about that, it's something we don't really talk about very often, was really good. But next week, we got one going to get recorded, and it's all about how people act in crisis situations, particularly fire, and what we can do around that. But I'll tell you more about that next week.
Stay tuned for that one. In addition to the exciting stuff we have over on 1202, the Human Factors podcast, we also have coming up next week for you all on Friday. It's going to be another HFES presidential town hall. So I'll sit down with HFES leadership to kind of talk about what is going on in the state of human factors as a field, as well as the organization. So please join us. It's going to be at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 Eastern. It's going to be on all our channels, as well as all the HFES official channels as well. So do check that out. All right, we know why you're here. You're here for this sexy story. So why don't we go ahead and get into it? It's... I think this may be the sexiest story we've ever done on the show. This is the part of the show all about human factors news. Barry, let's break it down. What do we have this week?
So this week we're talking about understanding sexual activity whilst driving as a form of distracted driving. So researchers from Queensland University of Technology recently conducted a content analysis of 270 Pornhub videos featuring drivers in moving vehicles engaging in sexual activities. The research was conducted to investigate how sexual activity whilst driving impacts a driver's performance. The focus of the study was to understand interactions with road safety and driver behavior. So the researchers found that a third of drivers didn't wear seatbelts whilst the vehicle was moving. When they did wear a seatbelt, drivers were less likely to satisfactorily complete their activity. Unsurprisingly, vehicle control was impaired, with approximately 3 out of 4 drivers unable to keep 2 hands on the steering wheel as recommended. Staggeringly, 8% of drivers didn't have both feet on the pedal in the pedal area, resulting in most commonly reported sex whilst driving incidents involving lane drifting. The researchers also found that drivers filming themselves during sex while driving is another form of distraction that hasn't been explored in previous research. Similar to other types of distracted driving, the researchers found that drivers engaging in sexual activity whilst driving appear to mitigate risks, citing a concern for potential legal sanctions. When considering this, it appears that drivers may attempt to conceal sexual activity by reducing their visible nudity and minimizing interactions with other road users. Mobile phones and cameras appear to interact with sexual activities while driving by imposing potential restrictions on the range of sexual activities. Implications for policymakers and practitioners are discussed within the paper. On a final note, sex while driving is risky behavior that requires both multidisciplinary and cross-sectoral collaboration to address. Health, transport, and education all need to work together. So, Nick, sex while driving, do the findings here do it for you?
Well, so look, we actually talked about this at our pre-show last week. We found this one right before the show. Then I think it was kind of in the next news cycle. We laughed at this during the pre-show because we thought it was kind of a funny topic to talk about, and the way that the presenter on Twitter kind of went through their thread was very humorous, and the gifs that they were using. But man, this is actually a really awesome story, and something that I think maybe is quite novel in its in its study. So Barry, what are you thinking about this study in general?
So in general, I think it clearly does throw up a lot of questions. Not all of which I'm even sure we can actually ask, never mind answer tonight. But there is kind of and we sort of said it before with some of these things. There's a bit of a well duh moment about this, because clearly if you're focused on one activity, you're not going to be as focused on another activity. So, but when we do, I guess there's the science behind this as well. It is using porn videos, exactly really good experimental procedure. I mean, where's the control? Where, that type of activity. But there, again, it's something that a lot of people I think would be really adverse to engaging a lot, because people get embarrassed. But it's the, should we be talking about such things? And I think absolutely we should be. There is a cultural bit as well. I think, in the US, most of your cars are automatic. Whereas in the UK, you can't have 2 feet out of the pedal area, because we got more pedals to move. And I think we'll probably hit it up later, but would this get worse or better depending on your perspective with autonomous driving and things like that? I think it just throw up a lot of questions that I think we should dive into.
Yeah, those are good questions, and I don't think most of our cars here are automatic, which is actually kind of an important distinction.
Ooh, yeah,
I would say maybe 1 in 20. I don't know if that. So yes, I think this is a great story for us to use as kind of a springboard to talk about risky driving behaviors in general, and then kind of what distracted driving really means. So there's a couple different ways in which risky driving behaviors are characterized. And what we're going to be using tonight is kind of data from the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration. This is here based in the States. We do a lot of driving here in the States. I know that's different in various places of the world, but I think it's important to note that, here in the States, we do have a lot of data because we drive a lot. So we'll be using that as kind of the baseline here. Do we want to talk about these one by one? Barry, do you want to go over the first one here?
Yeah, so drunk driving, the basically consuming alcohol whilst driving. So every day, about 28 people in the US die in drink driving crashes. That's one person for every 52 minutes. 2019, just over 10,000 people lost their lives to drink driving. Those are deaths that are all preventable. But it is in the UK, we have similar problems, and it's something that we really need to get into, but it's something that gets studied quite a lot as well. Do you want to talk about drug impaired driving?
Yeah, and a lot of these are very simple kind of explanations of what these risky driving behaviors are, but we are giving some of these statistics to kind of contextualize exactly why they're risky. But yes, drug impaired driving, it's completely illegal everywhere here in America to drive under the influence of anything like alcohol, marijuana, opioids, methamphetamines, any other potentially drug prescribed, either over the counter or prescribed, that is sort of impairing, right? So it's completely illegal to drive with any of those. They say impaired driving or buzz driving is drunk driving, and I think that's the same here. If you take a drug that impairs your ability to basically react and perform in a way that's going to be safe for you as the driver and any passengers in your vehicle, as well as everybody else on the road, then we're talking about risky driving behavior here. So driving while impaired by any substance, legal or illegal, puts you and others in harm's way, like I kind of said, right? And in terms of safety facts for this one, 56% of drivers involved in serious injury and fatal crashes tested positive for at least one drug based on studied trauma centers. And that's from 2020. So fairly recent data, which is kind of shocking.
So the next bit that we look at is obviously seatbelts. Seatbelts are now pretty much mandatory. Well, they're mandatory in the US, they're mandatory in the UK. So one of the safest choices drivers and passengers can make is to buckle up. So many Americans understanding the life-saving value of the seatbelt, the national use rate was at just over 90% in 2021. They reckon that using a seatbelt saves just under 15,000 lives in 2017. And understanding the potentially fatal consequences of not wearing a seatbelt and learning what you do to make sure you and your family are properly buckled up every time, you need to do that. I said that it's mandatory to wear them in the US. Is it? It's definitely mandatory to wear them in the UK, but just checking before I do make gross assumptions there across the board.
Yes, it is the law. It is the law to wear your seatbelt. It's shocking to me that still only 90% wear them. The 10% that don't, I don't understand why. It saves your life. Why?
It's interesting culturally, actually. My granddad really doesn't, and he still doesn't like wearing seatbelts. And even when he goes in and will wear them, will put his hand under the cross belt that goes across your chest and pull it down from his chest because he says it feels it's constraining him. Now, I do think it is a cultural thing. A generational thing. That actually most people, younger people now, just wear a seatbelt without really thinking about it. But
it's just a scam from the big seatbelt companies, man. They're just trying. All right, let's get into this next one here. This is speeding and aggressive driving. So, over 2 decades here of data, speeding has been involved in approximately a third of all motor vehicle fatalities. So, going back to 2019, this is the latest data. Speeding was a contributing factor in 26% of all traffic fatalities, killing 9,478 people. If you thought we were just talking about sex in this episode, no, we're talking about death too. So when we're talking about speed and this aggressive driving, we're talking about how speed really affects your safety because from a human factors perspective, it kind of reduces the amount of reaction time that you have to do something. But this also isn't just talking about speed when considering like a speed limit. This is also considering road conditions. So things like during bad weather, when the road is under repair, or an area that's not well lit at night, right? So we're talking about these types of conditions. When you talk about speeding, right, it really does endanger everybody. There's someone walks into the road with a speeder and it's over, and it's tragic. And I mean, there is something to be said about speeding on the road, right? We're all sort of familiar with these frustrations with modern life and kind of juggling these busy schedules that we all kind of make for ourselves. But when thinking about speed limits, right, these are highly researched things that human factors professionals actually have a lot of say into, and they are put into place to protect everybody. So the limit is the limit. And my wife always gets on me about this because I say, no, the limit's the limit when she says I'm driving like a grandpa. Yes, but it says 65. I'm not going to go 70. Anyway, that's my 2 cents. There's this next one, and then we'll get into everything else.
Yeah, interesting thing about the speed though. We are going through a thing in Wales at the moment where they're looking to try and so we have 30-mile-an-hour limits going through urban areas, and they're looking to reduce that, basically blanket reduce it down to 20 mile an hour. And it's interesting seeing people's reactions to that consultation at the moment. The last bit is around is around drowsy driving, and I'm sure this is something that most drivers have done at one time or another, particularly if you do a lot of miles. So fatigue has costly effects on the safety, health, and quality of life. Whether fatigue is caused by sleep restrictions due to new babies, waking every couple of hours, or late shifts, long shifts, hanging out late with friends, or just a long and monotonous drive for your holiday, or even for work. And the negative outcomes can be the same. And that is impaired cognition and impaired performance. That will result in crashes, workplace accidents, and health consequences. So this whole drowsy piece can be really difficult to tackle when your lifestyle doesn't align with avoiding drowsy driving. As you just mentioned around wanting to be in your vehicle a lot more. We live in a 24/7 society with an emphasis on work, longer commutes, and exponential advancement of technology. People don't get the sleep that they need, and I can really, really talk about that a lot at the moment. But effectively dealing with the drowsy driving problem requires really us to fundamentally change our societal norms, and especially attitudes towards drowsy driving. So we've done quite a lot of the risky driving behaviors. What about what is distracted driving? Can you give us an insight into actually what distracted driving is?
Yeah, we'll talk about distracted driving. I do want to make one kind of comment on all the ones that we've covered so far, and including distracted driving. A lot of these statistics are based pre-pandemic, and so these statistics are going to change over time, especially as more people are working from home and people are commuting less. There's going to be some differences in the data, so I just want to kind of caveat all of this stuff that we're reporting on now, right? A lot of this stuff is from 2019, 2021, 2020. So it's like kind of before or during the beginning of the pandemic. It's still a little bit out of date is what I'm saying here. And I just take that with a grain of salt. So yes, let's talk about kind of the main course here, distracted driving, and we can talk about it in the lens of this article here, which is suggesting that sex while driving could be a form of distracted driving. So let's actually break this down. So distracted driving, this could be defined as any activity kind of that takes your attention away from activities critical for safe driving or operating a vehicle, right? So these distractions can be categorized into three different areas. If you think about visual distractions, manual distractions, or cognitive distractions, if you want examples of each, right? A visual distraction might be looking at a phone to read a text message. That is something that is distracting you from looking at the road. You are looking at manual distractions. These are sort of the activities that take the hands away from the wheel. So not taking the the article into account here, but another example might be sort of dialing a handheld phone, right? So you hold the phone in one hand and you're dialing the other, and you're holding the steering wheel with your knees. And then the last one here is cognitive, and so these types of distractions is when a driver's mind is off the road. So this is anytime that your mind floats to a different thought, anytime that you are sort of thinking about work while you're on the road, those types of things, or sort of we talked about working on the road, like dictating an email while you're kind of talking to your phone, doing this on the road, right? That is a you're taking your mind off the road. So there's a lot of different distractions that require a mix of any one of these three sort of cognitive resources at any given time. So in this handheld phone example, it requires all three resources and is considered a distraction for both or all visual, manual, and cognitive. And when we look at this article through the lens of distracted driving, traditionally, sex would fall across all three of these categories, right? It is a visual distraction, a manual distraction, and a cognitive distraction. I'm not going to describe specific acts here. I think everyone can use their imaginations for that. And we're trying to keep this, I wouldn't say somewhat family friendly, but we're trying to keep it away from the R rating. So we'll put it there. Do you want to talk a little bit about some of these distracted driving statistics?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So in 2019, there were 3,142 people killed and many more people injured in motor vehicle crashes involving distracted drivers. 8% of factory crashes 8% of fatal crashes in 2019 were reported as distracted affected crashes. And at any given daylight moment across America, approximately 660,000 drivers are using cell phones or manipulating electronic devices whilst driving. So new voice-activated technologies intend to reduce crashes due to distraction, even more distracting than previous in-vehicle technology, which I think some people find surprising, but actually when you actually think about it, makes sense. And if you're texting whilst driving, it raises a driver's crash risk by 23 times. I mean, that's a significant amount of multiplication.
Staggering.
Yeah. Do you want to go into the effects?
Yeah, let's jump into some of the effects of distracted driving. A lot of these are kind of fairly straightforward. We don't need to go too into detailed here, but Obviously, if you're distracted, you're going to take increased time that your eyes are off the road. You're not going to be looking at the road, which is giving you critical visual information about the state of everything. Talk about situation awareness when you are dipping out of that situation awareness for a couple seconds to answer a text or uh, have sex, then you are, in fact, not looking at the road, right? You're also having an increased reaction time to hazards, especially when you are looking at those cognitive distractions, right? So thinking about something else while you're on the road is going to increase the reaction time when I don't know, a ball comes into the middle of the road from a kid playing in the street, or um, a tree falling. There's any number of things that can happen. We're also looking at increased braking reaction time, and especially if your feet are not in the pedal area, as this article says, right, that will have a huge impact on sort of your braking reaction time. And so, not only are you not able to swerve out of the way, but you are not able to brake as easily. Um, there's also a greater speed variability and slower mean speed when you are distracted driving, and slow speed can be dangerous too. And when we talk about speed variability, we're talking about kind of not a consistent speed, which can also be dangerous for drivers around you because they can't anticipate your movements if you are distracted doing other things and hitting the gas and hitting the brakes at an infrequent, inconsistent rate. And then sort of the we talked about the lane deviations and the lane departures within the context of the article. That's another thing that can happen as an effect of distracted driving. And lastly, kind of you can follow cars closer when you are distracted too, because you are not sort of doing the recommended counting in your head of paces behind a vehicle for every 10 kilometers per hour or 10 miles per hour that you are going. And so that is kind of distracted driving in a nutshell, risky driving behaviors in a nutshell. Any other final thoughts on that stuff before we start talking about this article in the context of all this?
I guess the one thing that we haven't talked about at all is motivation. In with this, in terms of that risky behavior, because all the other sort of risky behaviors that we've talked about tend to be, you kind of done it because you've ended up in a circumstance, or it might be accidental. So like drink driving, you've drank something and then thought to drive, whatever. With the article that we're talking about, they are taking part in a specific act, and they're doing the two acts together. So, you're talking about why are they doing that in the first place? So they actually want to engage in risky behavior. That's part of the, I guess that's part of the thrill. That's part of the motivation behind doing it, which maybe is something that we should be picking up in the article discussion. But again, it looks about why you dig back into why would people be motivated to take that sort of risky behavior, and we see that across also all parts of life as well, where people take part in risky acts for the adrenaline buzz, for that type of thing. So that's something to look into, that motivational bit about why you would take part in that sort of activity in the first place.
No, that's a great point. I mean, when we talk about motivation, you're talking about some of these instances like drunk driving, where your sort of judgment might be impaired, right?
Mm-hmm.
Drug impaired, same thing. Judgment might be impaired. Seatbelt driving, seatbelt safety, you might just not have the knowledge of how effective it is at saving your life. You might just be uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me is more of an active choice. But since that's such a high use rate, I don't want to focus too much on that one. When it comes to speeding and aggressive driving, obviously, if something happens that agitates you and irritates your I don't know, status quo, then you are more likely to engage in risky behaviors because, again, your judgment is impaired. And when it comes to drowsy driving, again, we have that judgment impaired thing. Now, distracted driving is kind of the one that's interesting because your judgment is not necessarily impaired by any external factors here.
Yeah.
You are sort of choosing to engage in some of these behaviors, whether it's looking at your phone or um, responding to a text message or having sex in this article, right? And so, yeah, it's really interesting, and thank you for bringing up that motivation, right? So, um, let's talk about the article discussion. Is there any like key takeaways that you want to talk about here, Barry, in terms of distracted driving as it relates to having sex in a vehicle while it's moving?
There is a certain element here about, firstly, how did they get funded to do that, and can I get some of that funding? it is interesting that the way that they've bored a lot of that out, that they focus on this area of distraction, when actually distraction can take a broad variety of, as we talked about tonight. There's loads of stuff that you can be distracted around there. So I guess an interesting bit around it is, if you're looking at this behavior on the internet, then is that going to increase the risk of then you wanting to copy that activity? So how do you make sure that that bit there is, is that the right thing to do? Should they be putting that sort of that material on there? The bit that I mentioned in my commentary is the impact on future car development and autonomy. And I realize I've just stolen two of your points. That's fair enough. But the autonomy piece, I think, is really interesting, because we've already seen accidents involving cars that have autonomous capability, where people know that they're meant to be sat there with their hands ready to go around the steering wheel, and they don't. They've been they've been engaging in behavior that they knew was not what was required of them to drive. In some cases, they've been like in the back seat, and they've been asleep. They've pick almost any one of them behaviors above that we talked about. The autonomy element makes that more likely. Therefore, it does lend itself to, we'll be seeing more of this sexual activity whilst in a car, because it allows the driver to be not to pay as much attention to the road. I'll stop stealing your points now. What do you think about the?
That's great. No, I think these points are great, and I think the interesting piece to me also, I'll jump on to the automated vehicles, because there's kind of a late breaking story that just happened this week. We posted in our news roundup on our blog. You can go check that out, and it's actually a candidate for next week's story. So if you want to hear about that, join us on Twitter, vote in the poll, or become a patron and vote there. But U.S. regulators here in the States no longer require fully autonomous vehicles to have human controls. So we are starting to go the way of where there doesn't need to be any sort of human input on these autonomous vehicles. And so acts like this might become more and more prevalent. And, it does kind of bring into question like the whole human in the loop concept, right? How do you kind of keep the human engaged with what's going on around you in case there is an emergency scenario? Someone crashes into you while you're having sex in a vehicle that's automated. Like, how do you react to that when you are distracted? Or even, as simple as something where you are working on a project on your laptop because, you're just, it's all automated. You don't need to worry about it. How do you keep the human in the loop? So it brings up that whole sort of question. I think one thing that I really appreciate is kind of the authors, one of the authors on Twitter, they had this whole thread here, and they kind of highlighted the importance of doing this type of research. And yes, there are questions about controls, but when you think about having sort of a study like this, there's a bunch of things that need to go right in order to have a true experimental study to analyze. Yeah. And this is sort of self-reported acts. And I wonder too, like, how much of this is professional, where they have, kind of a car in tow on a trolley, right? Or is this like user submitted, where it is actual people performing these acts in a vehicle that's moving? I don't know. That'd be an interesting question to kind of break down in sort of these 270 videos that they looked at. So I think, like I said, the thing that I really appreciate is that this author really breaks down sort of the importance of this. You already mentioned the future vehicles. You already mentioned the copycat behaviors. I think there's another one here that's kind of getting at how we think about distraction, and really starting to think about these distractions in very complex tasks, right? I think these distracted driving behaviors that really do take the visual, the manual, and the cognitive distraction all in one go. But then there's also these nested tasks that they talk about, such as undressing. And that is sort of a complex distraction to sort of describe these nested interactions where you are doing something else within a larger task. And so when we think about sort of our conceptualization of distraction, all these things are really important. And I think kind of the final note here is that this is an incredibly risky behavior. And like you said in the blurb that this really does require a lot of different industries to kind of look at this, right? Health, how do you communicate that this is not a healthy behavior to engage in while you are on the road? Transportation, I would like to see how prevalent this issue is, honestly, like where the reports from like the NHTSA or any other government highway administration, like where are the reports and how many of those in fact are as a result of sex while driving, and is it really that big of an issue to talk about, or is this kind of a very niche area that still is kind of fun and cheeky to talk about? I don't know. But yeah, it's going to require a bunch of different sources to kind of solve this issue. And as it becomes more prevalent with these automated vehicles. Any other closing thoughts on this one, Barry? This is a fun one.
Yeah, I guess there's two. One is if there is more research required, then Nick's email address is, and also if you listen back to Nick's final closing comments, you'll notice that he put in a lot of stuff there because his mum's listening, and he made out that he doesn't look at any of these sort of websites at all, which I thought was very clever. And my mum's not listening, so I don't need to get away with that. But no, I think it is interesting. I like research like this that is willing to cross barriers, is willing to make us think about what we're doing, and not, yes, people, it's sort of embarrassing and stuff like that. People don't like talking about sex and all that sort of stuff, but we absolutely have to on a whole range of topics. But this is quite, because it is dangerous. I get why people do this sort of stuff. It's fun, exciting, all that sort of stuff, but it's dangerous. So yes, so what are going to be the impacts of this going on? And also comfort. Surely you've got to make sure the seats in the car are comfortable for doing this sort of thing, which is also a human factor.
Do they recline far enough? That type of thing. Is there? Do they go back far enough so that you can get your feet in the pedal area? There's all these considerations, obviously. Yeah. Well, Barry, I think we handled that quite well. I'm very proud of us.
Maturely, I thought we were very mature about the whole thing.
Thank you to our patrons for this week, and thank you to everyone who participated in our Twitter poll for selecting our topic, and thank you to our friends over at Queensland University of Technology for our news story this week. This was really enjoyable to talk about. If you want to follow along, we do post links to all the original articles on our weekly roundups in our blog. You can also join us on our Discord for more sexy discussion on this story and more. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back to see what's going on in the human factors community right after this.
Human Factors Cast brings you the best in human factors news, interviews, conference coverage, and overall fun conversations into each and every episode we produce. But we can't do it without you. The Human Factors Cast network is 100% listener supported. All the funds that go into running the show come from our listeners. Our patrons are our priority, and we want to ensure we're giving back to you for supporting us. Pledges start at just $1 per month and include rewards like access to our weekly Q&As with the hosts, personalized professional reviews, and Human Factors Minute, a Patreon-only weekly podcast where the hosts break down unique, obscure, and interesting human factors topics in just 1 minute. Patreon rewards are always evolving, so stop by patreon.com/humanfactorscast to see what support level may be right for you. Thank you, and remember, it depends.
Yes, huge thank you as always to our patrons. We especially want to thank our honorary Human Factors Cast staff patron, Michelle Tripp. Thank you so much. Your continued support helps the show keep going. We're always looking for more patrons because the more we get, obviously, the more we can expand our capability and accessibility to others. We talked about this in the pre-show. But I do want to talk a little bit about our Discord. We do have a Discord server. It's, if you want to go to it, it's go.humanfactorscast.media/Discord. Very easy URL to get to. This is a great opportunity for you to get involved with other human factors professionals from all over the world. We're always having great conversations in there, and I'd like to take this moment to kind of highlight some of these conversations right now. I asked a question in there earlier this week about kind of what's the worst mistake that you've made in recent history, and we got some good answers in there. I won't spoil them here. You got to go to the Discord to check those out. Both Barry and I responded to that one. Additionally, there are questions about sort of breaking into sort of UX and human factors work from other domains. That's another conversation thread that's going on right now, in terms of kind of tailoring your past work for getting into the field of human factors, UX research, that type of thing. So there's always great conversations going on over there. Highly encourage anyone who's listening, if you want to get involved with the community, please go check it out. You can also chat with others in our voice channels. I'll occasionally jump in there while I'm looking for news stories. And if you are interested in the digital media lab, we do have all of our lab chat is kind of done through the Discord platform. It's hidden to the public, but you can interact with all of our lab members and kind of ask them questions if it's something that you're curious about, and if you're interested in that type of thing. It's an incredibly effective tool. Anyway, Discord bump done. I think it's time that we get into this next part of the show we like to call
It came from.
Yes, it came from this week. It's all Reddit, and this is the part of the show where we search all over the internet to bring you topics that the community is talking about. If you find any of these useful, wherever you're watching, listening, please give us a like to help other people find this content, so that way it might help them too. Barry, I have selected a somewhat controversial topic because you did one last week on what was it, the paper prototyping. I have chosen one this week on handwriting. I want to talk about this one first. Evangelizing that UX and UI designers or human factors practitioners improve their handwriting to be more on par with industrial designers and architects. Why? In front of clients, handwriting is an autobiography. It creates clarity, builds trust, and increases confidence. This is by Sachio222 on the user experience subreddit. That's it. That's the post. It is a link to a video. You can watch it there. We'll put the link in the description. It triggered me, Barry. Here we are. What do you think about this concept? Do UX folks, UI folks, and human factors folks need to have good handwriting in order to sort of communicate concepts in front of clients?
No. Next question. So from my perspective, my handwriting's terrible. So I'll put my thing out there. That's why I type most of my stuff up. But I think the main point I think I use this is if I'm workshopping, and that can be whiteboarding on Post-its and things like that. But it kind of, for me, gets out a lot of the passion that you're talking with. And all them sort of notes and that type of thing are all very much of its time, and you'll probably transcribe them later and that type of thing. If I was writing longhand reports, then yes, my writing would have to get a lot better. But I think if I could write neater, then yes, that would be an obvious advantage. I'm definitely not saying that. But am I going to sit there and slow down my creative thought just to get my handwriting so everybody can see it? Possibly not. I guess you look at different skills in the room. If there is somebody with better handwriting than me, then I'll pick on them to do the whiteboard stuff. But I think you shouldn't be picking. I don't think you should be picking on people for the state of their handwriting. It's more that you're likely to get more people to turning off engaging with your activity if you're just going to critique them on the way that they write. That said, it should all be legible and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, I'd rather people got involved than worried about how their writing was going to look like.
Yeah.
Anyway, what do you think?
This is shit. It triggered me because I think your resources can be spent in so much other better, more efficient ways than improving your handwriting, right? Why don't you improve your research methodology? Why don't you improve the tools in which you're the tools and methods in which you're collecting user data, the way in which you communicate? Now, I would argue that communication is an absolutely critical skill that you should invest in, because understanding what somebody is saying, reading between the lines of what they're saying, and asking clarifying questions about what they are saying is key to getting good data that's going to inform your design. So with that said, handwriting is not going to do any of that. This makes me mad. It makes me mad. It's such a bad take. Don't worry about your handwriting. If it sucks, it sucks. But
it sucks. This one, yeah.
Yeah, it's not the end of the world, and it's not the people who advocate that this is sort of the next way to go. I don't know. It leaves a bad taste in my mouth. Anyway, there's the controversial one for this week. Get it out of the way at the top. We're going to get into this. We'll get into this next one. This is how to cope with job rejections after receiving positive feedback. This is written by Dream in White on the user experience subreddit. They go on to write, "Hi, everyone. I was wondering if you guys have any advice on how to cope with job rejections, particularly when interviewers respond with, quote, very positive feedback, but not, quote, the right fit for the role at the moment. It has been really disheartening getting several rejections after doing multiple interviews only to get this type of feedback. I'm not sure if they are just saying that to make me feel better or if I could genuinely be doing something better. Also, do you guys have any advice on how I can do any better? I felt good coming out of each interview, but get these rejections ultimately. I'm not sure where I'm going wrong." They go on to provide a few examples. I won't go into them, but to summarize, basically their companies are effectively citing timing and fit for the reason that they weren't hired. So Barry, how do you cope with job rejections? Have you ever had a job rejection? How do you cope with it?
I've been rejected from many jobs, and it's, I guess, more recently. So obviously, having run my own company for the past 10 years, I guess the rejections we get more of now is when we maybe go for contract and we lose the contract, we don't win the contract. You know, we'll get feedback saying, "Oh, it was really good," and this, that, and the other, and you're like, "Yeah, but if it was that good, why didn't I get it?" All you can do, I mean, fundamentally, the person who's hiring for that job will hire the candidate that they think is the best for their job. And on the one hand, I'm a big fan of employment law, and the discrimination laws that make sure that you are treated fairly when you go into an interview, that you are, you get to, you're not discriminated against on sex, color, creed, all that sort of stuff. You're very much taken at the technical capability of what you do. But fundamentally, that the person who's hiring is going to have the candidate that they want to hire, and it might be one candidate, two candidates, however many, and the rest of us aren't going to get the job. And certainly I feel when I've had to let people down, I don't really want to go back to people and say, you were awful, you were rubbish, I just didn't like you, and that sort of stuff. You want to give people feedback that they can constructively go back and use. And I've interviewed quite a few candidates, and in fact, we did it at the start of this year. Start last year, when we had some amazing candidates come and talk, and it was, a hair's whisker between who we were hiring and second and third place. So you don't want to go back and say, it was close. These were the great bits. These are the bits where we think you could improve. You've just got to take them at the face value. Take the feedback that you've got, build upon it on the plus points, work on the perceived weaknesses that might have been highlighted, but also don't forget that sometimes you might have just had a weakness highlighted because they felt they had to say something. And I think a lot of this, particularly if you're getting this sort of feedback where you're getting really good feedback most of the time, it is a case of it's not you, it's me. As in, it's the hirers. They've just chosen the candidate they want, that they feel is the better fit for their job, role, organization, and it just is what it is, I'm afraid. I think, certainly from my perspective. Nick, what do you think? Have you ever been rejected for a job?
Yes, I have. And it's almost worse in a lot of ways when you don't hear back. And so I guess be thankful that you are hearing back even in the first place. So you can think that you have like this amazing sort of rapport with the team and with, everybody involved in the hiring process, and you feel like you gel with the company. But honestly, it could be any number of things that they chose not to hire you for. And Barry, like you said, it could be kind of just teetering on the line, flip a coin, who gets it, right? Like, there's a lot of good candidates out there, and if for whatever reason somebody is just a better fit culturally, then that might be a consideration, right? It could be a culture fit. It could be a convenience fit. You might not live as close, even though you're remote. You might not live as close to the rest of the team, and that might be a consideration too. There's just a million different things in what it could be, and so I wouldn't sit and ruminate on it. I know it's hard not to do, but my advice is kind of, ask these questions that you're asking this Reddit, right? Ask these questions to them, right? Like, hey, do you have any advice on what I can do to improve for the next person or the next company that I apply to, right? And ask them for some of that genuine feedback. And if they're a good company and want to provide some of that, they will. But what do you have to lose, right? They already said they're not going to hire you, so you might as well get something out of that process and sort of really analyze what went well, what didn't, and maybe try to figure out what it could be, but don't drive yourself mad doing that. There's just a lot of things that could be. Don't beat yourself up over it. Just head down, keep applying. You'll get there. Yeah.
Look forward. Keep looking forward. Don't look back. Look forward.
Yeah. Well, head down, do the work, and then look forward. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get into this last one here. Do you need a portfolio for UX research? This is by the Antinon on the user experience subreddit. I'm currently applying to UX design jobs and internships, but my main experience is just volunteer nonprofit work, and it's competitive out there. I like design a lot, but I also understand that UX, the research is the foundation of everything else, and I want to start looking into those jobs too. I have some short-term experience in research, a research sprint or school's design lab, developing user research plans and feedback, etc. But my resume right now is tailored to design. What sort of skills and knowledge are they looking for in applications? How important is my portfolio in UX research versus UX design? What can I do to make myself a good candidate, especially for associate or junior roles? Barry, there's a lot to dissect here, actually. What are your thoughts?
So, firstly, there's no such thing as just volunteer non-for-profit work. Volunteer work is work, whether you're paid for it or not. How you're engaged with it is got nothing to do with monetary value. Most people I find who do volunteer work actually put more effort into the volunteer work than they do the paid work, because of the way that our minds work around it. It's weird but true. But you are right; it is competitive out there. I don't get hung up that much about the different in the UX and human factors field. Generally, I find that people know a little bit of everything and then have the stuff that they like to do. So I think that having this big divide between the research and the design elements, they both sort of kind of blend into each other to a certain extent. And if you've got some experience there, then great. But you want to do more, then if you bring that out, show that you can do both sides. But yeah, don't throw your portfolio away just because you think it's in the wrong side. Show something that's balanced. And because fundamentally, when you get to interview, when you get to apply for roles, really what they're looking for is you. They're looking for your personality. They're looking for your drive, your commitment to. I've had certainly experiences where I went for one job and it was all around an area of human factors I'd never done before. I just hadn't even been anywhere near it. But I sort of chat to them and told them what I was like, the sort of stuff I get involved in, the sort of stuff I like to do. I love learning new techniques, new ideas, and that type of thing. And they're like, "Oh, you don't actually have the skills that we're looking for, but you've shown a commitment to them. We're fairly sure you could pick them up. It's not rocket science, blah blah blah," and ended up getting the role, which was great, and then ended up growing myself within that piece. So yeah, I think look at yourself as much as anything else. Bring out what you can do, and tell people what you want to, where you want to go, what you want to do. Most good companies, if they see the personality within you, will help you go in the direction you want to go in.
Yeah. I have a problem with labeling a thing a research portfolio. When you think about UX design or design in general, it makes sense to have a portfolio of work in which you have sort of these examples of past work that you can point to and say, look, here's the process that I used for this. These are the components that I used for this because of X, Y, and Z. This is kind of the process. But when it comes to research, really, your research is your body of work that you've worked on before. And really, you're going to want to take anything that's relevant to the job that you're applying and sort of make a job talk out of it. In a lot of cases, you're going to do like a presentation or some sort of overview about the breadth and depth of research that you've conducted. and talk a lot about the methodology that you employ and not necessarily, some of the outcomes or the pretty screens or whatever that comes out of it. So I have a problem with calling something a UX research portfolio when you think about, like, hey, I've done this methodology and this is where I've applied it. I mean, take note of that, but you don't need a website to say that, or you don't need sort of this fancy tool online through Figma that shows you like everything that you've done. No, just talk about it. Make a PowerPoint that's good enough for most people, because really what you're doing in those roles is not design, you're doing research. And so, I don't know, just take a look at the body of work that you've done and pull out the research stuff. Now, in terms of the specific person that, they're looking for, how do I sort of reframe some of the stuff that I've done in design work and aim that towards research? You can do that. I'm not going to spoil the answer to that because we have the answer to that in our Discord. Go check it out there. But really the gist is that you have work that you've done, reframe it and try to make it more applicable to the role that you want. Okay, we've made it through. Barry, it's time for that one more thing. No introduction, just one more thing.
So, contrary to what I usually do, I'm going to go with one more thing, as opposed to I'm not no twofers. But it's just been here in Wales. It rains a lot, and it's been winter and all that sort of stuff. But it's now nice weather, and for the past few days, it's been really nice. And I've been outside. I've been doing some bits of DIY, but not just the stuff that is in the house. And I should be doing. Amanda, my wife, says I should be doing all this. I haven't done any of that. I've been doing something I've been enjoying. I've been doing some woodworking and creating a new workbench and all this sort of stuff and a bit of gardening. And it's just helped my mental health so much. I've just felt like a different person this week, like a lot more optimistic and a lot more forward looking. And I've just really enjoyed it. So yay for nice weather and yay for this past week.
It's probably the lack of COVID too. Is probably why you're feeling like a brand new person.
There is a bit of that as well, yes. So the COVID fairy has left the body, which is good. And I did another test. A friend of mine tested positive today, so I took another test just in case maybe it come back or something. But no, yes, that is true. But nice weather as well.
Yeah. Well, good. I'm really happy for you. Yes, the weather is changing. We're gonna go see the cherry blossoms this weekend, so that'll be fun. For me, my one more thing. I've talked about my mental health here on the show before. I was recently diagnosed with ADHD. I'm going to talk about drugs. I was recently prescribed new drugs because I wasn't quite sure how effective the last batch was, and I won't name specific names here, but this one operates very differently from the other ones that I have tried, and it is both wonderful and really difficult to deal with. So during the day, I take these things and I'm like very, very focused and productive with what I'm working on. When they start wearing off in the evening, I get really irritable. It is so annoying because in my head I'm like, don't get irritable. Like it's a very small thing. It's going to set you off. Why is it setting you off? That's so weird. And it's just it's so weird the way that some of these interactions with your brain chemistry work. And I just find it endlessly fascinating to like, I'm treating this like trial and error, right? Like this is going to be like a month-long, maybe month and a half long trial at various dosages and various combinations with other medication that I'm taking. And so it's like, it is this interesting way to approach it from like a scientist perspective of like, well, how is my body reacting? And I'm trying to like take that objective perspective and being like, yes, I'm very much more irritable when this thing wears off, and I can feel it wearing off, and I can feel it coming on, and I'm noticing a marked increase in my productivity at work, and I am, like I'm writing notes about this so that way I come back to my my prescriber and say, here's everything that's going on, and I am treating it like an experiment, and I'm comparing and contrasting across groups. Yeah, it's very fascinating, and I would love to talk to anybody else who has had a similar experience because it's just, I don't know, it's something I haven't experienced before. Anyway, that's going to be it for today, everyone. If you like this episode and enjoy some of the discussion about distracted driving and how we might be able to eliminate that with AI and automation in vehicles, I'll encourage you to go listen to episode 227, How Cars of the Future Might Understand Our Passengers. Comment wherever you're listening with what you think of the story this week for more in-depth discussion. Like I said, you can join us on our Discord community. It's a great place. For everything else, you can visit our official website, sign up for our newsletter, stay up to date with all the latest Human Factors news. If you like what you hear, you want to support the show, there's a couple things that you can do. One, wherever you're at right now, stop, leave us a 5-star review. That's free for you to do. Takes a little bit of your time, but it really helps out the show. 2, if you're so willing, tell other people about the show. That really helps the show grow because it comes at your recommendation that you, in fact, are enjoying what you're listening to. 3, if you're financially able and want to help support the show, help support others by becoming more accessible or providing more tools for us to use internally in the lab, you can always consider supporting us on Patreon. As always, links to all of our socials and our website are in the description of this episode. Mr. Barry Kirby, thank you for being on the show today and talking about this taboo topic with us. Where can our listeners go and find you if they want to talk about explicit acts that they can perform in moving vehicles?
I think there's probably a different Twitter account for that. But my Twitter account is at Baz_K. You can find me on there at any time. Or if you want to listen to some of the other stuff we talk about with the interview side of things, then 1202, the Human Factors podcast, is at 1202podcast.com.
We almost made it through. As for me, I've been your host, Nick Roome. You can find me across social media at Nick_Roome. Thanks again for tuning into Human Factors Cast. Until next time,
it depends.
All right, stick around. We're going to do a post show.
Oh, how do you post show that one?
Wow, that was phenomenal.
It was
wow.
So I was kind of, when you sort of said about the Patreon and bit and supporting us, I was going to say, because that Pornhub subscription won't pay for itself.
Research. It's research, right?
Absolutely.
God.
It's
oh man.
Do you reckon they put that in the grant application? Pornhub Pro membership or whatever it is, because presumably there must be a membership model.
Yeah, and okay, so we're talking about methodology now. I'm wondering why they didn't explore other websites, or if there was just too much across the websites that it was just, I mean, did they choose one to keep it the same? I don't know.
Maybe, yeah. It's
like do they have a shared account so that way they can like see what the other research assistants kind of looked at and they make sure that they didn't watch that one as
and
well.
There must have been a checklist type thing involved, because I don't think it would have occurred to me to look at the whole. They must have had a checklist of safety, because they obviously picked up the thing about the seat belts. They picked up hands on the wheels, feet in the footwell, all that sort of stuff. So they must have had a checklist on each video about what. I'd be really quite interested, because I don't know how much detail the actual paper went into itself, because I didn't actually read the entire paper because it was obviously behind the firewall. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see. I'd be really interested to talk to the researchers to sort of say, look, what paper aside, what was the nitty gritty behind this, and did you really come up with it? How did you come up with the idea of it in the first place? Tell me you were in the bar and seeing
right.
Of like 5 or 6 beers, what's the most ridiculous paper you can or most ridiculous thing you can think of applying it to, but then actually it turns out to be a really good serious paper. I just think it's amusing.
Yeah, fantastic. I am looking at.
It appeals to my childish sense of humor as well.
Yeah,
which always helps.
So it says it's free until April 27, which means anyone listening to this or watching this should be able to get access. I'm okay. I found the full PDF here. We can dig into this, because I think this is where the post show actually really excels, is when we use it as an extension to talk about the article in more depth. I really like that aspect of the post show.
Why didn't I get hold of it then? Why?
I don't know. I was on one side and it said, access through your institution, but then I re-clicked on the link and it said view PDF. So I'm not sure what's going on here. You might have to access the link through the one shared in the Twitter thread and not the one that I've posted in our show notes. I'm not sure.
Might be.
I may have posted the official one, because I didn't want anyone that shouldn't get it for free. I don't know. So let's see here. The methodology is what we're really looking at here, right? So methods, ethics approval to conduct this research was granted by the Queensland University Technology Human Research Ethics Committee. Okay. The videos used for this content analysis were most viewed videos in the straight and gay category from most visited free internet SEM website at the data of time collection, Pornhub.com. Okay, so they are, let's see here, most visited free internet website. So that was their criteria. That's why they chose this one. This approach of using the most viewed videos. Okay, so that's how they did it. They did most viewed videos. It's an indicator of popularity and relevance, and it's been used in previous content analyses. Using internet traffic analytics, they identified the most viewed sexually explicit material websites globally and selected the most popular, which is Pornhub. Rationale for selecting Pornhub was based on two factors. One, it's a free website accessible to the general population across platforms. Two, it's the most trafficked website. It's likely to be used by most people, including drivers. The present study was focused on analyzing videos that depicted a driver engaging in sexual activity while in control of the moving vehicle. Data collection occurred in two phases, whereby an initial larger sample of videos, including the number of views, likes, and their rank, was collected in December 2019. This included a conservative initial sample of 4,000 videos, whereby the search terms driver and driving were entered separately into the Pornhub website search function. 2,000 videos were sampled for the quote driver and quote driving search terms. The second phase of more detailed data collection of the videos, i.e. assessing videos against inclusion criteria and collection of additional video data, occurred across January to October of 2020. So they spent, 10 months watching porn. The coding of the included sample of 270 videos was undertaken concurrently during January to October 2020. Why am I not surprised it took so long to get that data? All right. For this content analysis, a total of 270 videos were selected from Pornhub.com, with 210 videos from the straight category and 60 videos from the gay category. Overall, the coders viewed and coded 25.4 hours of sexually explicit material videos. Inclusion criteria were that the video participants were driving a moving vehicle, a large taxi, a large car, a truck, whilst the vehicle was moving. The clothed or unclothed driver was engaging in some form of sexual activity. In the present in the present study, driving included a driver in control of the moving vehicle on a road, whilst videos depicting the use of a driving simulator, a static vehicle with an exterior screen displaying real traffic, or a vehicle that is stopped and pulled over, always when sexual activity occurred, were excluded. Okay, so they did control for those things. However, there's no way to know whether or not it was a professional video that they had on a dolly behind a moving vehicle, so that way there's no danger. Yeah. Right. Sexual activity included at a minimum driver's genital. Okay, this might be too much to talk about here. Yeah, I'm not gonna talk about this stuff. This will turn our PG-13 rating into an R real quick. The video could be amateur or professional in the nature of this context. Anyway, that's just describing some sexual acts. The video could be amateur or professional in the nature of its content, provided the inclusion criteria mentioned above were satisfied. Videos were excluded if no sexual activity was depicted while the vehicle was moving. The most common reasons for excluding the videos were no driving was depicted, no driving during sex was depicted, and the driver was not engaged in sexual activity, or the video was a duplicate. So that's the methods section. I just read the whole methods section, but minus that one part.
Seems legit.
So let's see here. If you want to talk about the coding, right? We have the measures themselves. That's not the whole method session, I guess. That was the sample selection. So here's the measures, right? Consistent with previous content analysis procedures, a preliminary pilot content analysis of videos was undertaken between October and November to develop the coding system for the content analysis of the videos. They developed a written coding manual defining each category of behavior with examples of the codes. Code definitions were refined in a pilot phase. So this is very similar to your prediction here. Videos were coded from beginning to end. Coders first collected data about the driver and the passenger characteristics, such as gender, whether or not they were male or female, maximum amount of nudity reached in the vehicle, which included fully clothed, topless, or at least one nipple showing, but generally genitals covered, upper body clothed, but genitals exposed, and fully naked with genitals exposed. So they had some various categories there. Coders subsequently collected data about the presence of sexual behaviors, accounting for behaviors that could be performed by the driver or passenger on themselves and or the other person, purely on the vehicle occupant. Let's see here. Or purely on the other vehicle occupant. These behaviors included blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to list them. In total, 13 possible sexual behaviors were coded for both the driver and the passenger. Additional data were collected regarding characteristics, so vehicle transmission, type of vehicle, and road environment characteristics, so type of road, surrounding geographical context, weather, daytime, nighttime, a range of interactions between the driver and other road users, so other vehicles, pedestrians, cyclists were coded, including verbal interactions, eye contact, glances, and physical interactions and gestures. Lastly, several groups of non-sexual driving behaviors were coded, such as protective behaviors, i.e., for example, seat belt use, vehicle control, so how many hands were on the steering wheel, keeping 2 feet in the pedal area, and distracted driving behaviors, holding the phone or camera, or phone used while driving, undressing while driving. Some videos had periods of the vehicle being stopped. We coded sexual activities, interactions with the other road users, and road environment characteristics when the vehicle was moving and stopped. That's a lot.
Wow.
Obviously, they controlled for intercoder reliability and they performed a data analysis on it. But really, that is kind of at the crux of that methodology that we're all kind of curious about.
So just fundamentally, I was right.
Yes.
Yeah, cool. No, that's good. As long as we're there, that's fine. No, again, it's good. I mean, I always find the codifying a video anyway an interesting, if not laboriously, at the time. Afterwards, the data is always good, but when you're doing it, God, is it mind-numbingly boring.
Well, I don't think in this case it's probably not mind-numbing.
Possibly slightly different, but even
I mean, think about recruitment for this lab, right? Like,
yeah, but is it one of these things though that actually, because you're looking at it in such a probably different way, you know, you're looking at codifying behavior, and you'll be so focused on, right, okay, seatbelt on, seatbelt off, all that sort of stuff. You know, you'll probably never look at that sort of material in the same way again. It's
yeah, right. I mean, like, they go to watch it for fun, and they're like, "Oh, are they inside, outside? Is it nighttime, daytime? They're wearing a seat. Oh, they're wearing a seatbelt. That's great.
Seatbelts and feet in the footwell. Well done. That's excellent. Well done. But yeah, it's fair play. I think I would like somebody to come up with a really good system. I've seen a different system that that somebody uses for codifying sports matches and looking at the advertising time that somebody gets on a billboard and stuff, and so they can monetize it and stuff like that. And I saw that system and I was like, that could be really good for codifying video of whatever type of video.
Right.
And I just haven't had a project recently since I saw that system that I needed to codify anything that I wanted to sort of turn around and say, can I just borrow that and just fiddle with it, because I think this will work really, really well. But I'm kind of hoping that something will come up that'll allow me to play with it. In fact, thinking about it, I haven't codified a video for a good couple of years. It's been a while. Maybe I need a project to brush up on it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, when you think about like codifying videos in a user research perspective, I often question what you get out of that, unless you're looking for something very specific in terms of like monitoring and pulling out behaviors that are explicitly being studied. So I don't know. Yeah, it's been a while for me too. I think the last time I coded videos was Probably in undergrad. I don't know if I coded any videos in grad school. Now that I think about it.
I've done more. Well, okay, slightly funny story. I did one in 2019, probably about 2018, when I was working on a military project, and we were like, right, well, because the way that the stuff was recorded, we couldn't actually take the recording out of the building that we were in, that it was being recorded in. And we were like, typical sort of defense stuff. You're like, yeah, okay, great, whatever. So we're like, that's fine. We'll go into the room itself where the recording is, and we'll codify there. We'll sit down, we'll go through everything and all this sort of stuff. But because we codified the video, we couldn't take the codified out either. Because it was directly taken from the source. And he was like, so when we put this together, did anybody think that this was going to be a problem? Because I didn't. I thought I knew the video wouldn't be able to leave, but I had assumed that the codified material would be able to leave, but then that wasn't the case.
Right. Here we go. Where is it? There it is. It depends. I wore the shirt tonight. This thing is worn to bits, by the way. Like all the, I wear this so much that it's like wearing away. And my other one with the logo on it is like getting holy because I manage the cats and they like claw sometimes.
Yes.
To climb.
Oh.
Anyway, yes, in regards to like taking stuff out of a classified space, a high security space, it's interesting because you have to, like, I would bet that there are loopholes in the sense where you can sort of take the data out as long as it's anonymized. So, like, how many behaviors? Like how many behaviors were exhibited here? As long as you have like a key in the classified space, you can analyze the data externally, and sort of once the findings are out there, then it's declassified because it's not individuals anymore. Like there are some weird workarounds for that, and I do not miss working in that space. That was so painful to have to like make shorthand that I could carry out and manage in my head what I could and could not say. What we were working on and what we were studying and all that stuff. It's annoying. I'm really glad I'm out of that domain.
Oh, see, I like. There's a certain. It's so respected. There's a level of mystique around it.
There is.
You can turn around and say, I can't tell you what I'm up to, just because. And you could be working on something really, that week you could be working on something quite mundane, but nobody ever knows. I've just started a new role, or got more progressed into a new role that I've sort of got into the past couple of weeks, and it's proving to be very cool. And I mean that genuinely, not just because, oh, hello. Emojis. But that's proving interesting again because it's got me into this phase. I haven't done it's hard to describe. So I haven't done this role from this perspective before, and whereas normally I would be writing submissions and stuff, whereas this time I'm sort of more judging them and setting the overall requirements, which is quite cool. But it's that whole imposter syndrome piece where you go back to sort of like, right, I haven't done it quite this way before. Can I do it? Can you do it? And of course you can do it, but you just sort of sit there going, So I've sort of had that a bit of that this week, but it's it's quite cool. It works for me.
Well, I mean, here's the thing, Barry. I can also say those things. I can't tell you what I'm working on. I signed an NDA.
That's true. That
and basically work as a secret space, but I can keep everything contained there, right? Like,
yeah,
I don't know. It's kind of cool. Not that I wouldn't share, some things that I'm working on. Like, I don't know. It just if it came up in casual conversation, I could, but like, I mean, specifics, right, about like what the company's doing and all that stuff. I couldn't talk about that. But like it's kind of nice to have that freedom. In a lot of ways, it's more freeing. In some companies, some large tech companies, I know having an NDA is even more strict than having working on classified material, and so it's like, I don't know, pick your poison.
Hence why I'm here, I guess.
Yeah.
But no, it's interesting, isn't it? And it's ability. I mean, it's one of the things I really like about the human factors world is it is a relatively small space. There is fewer of us than most of us. I mean, certainly in the UK, there's we're in the low thousands as opposed to many. And the ability, I mean, this is one of the reasons I'm looking forward to conference next month. Is just the ability to get in a room with some beer or maybe a nice glass of wine and just being able to catch up with people. Because the ability to talk. I mean, the human factors world is one of these things anyway. We kind of talk our own language to. Ironically, considering we're meant to make things more accessible, we obviously have our own language and our own pain points and all that sort of stuff that you can't really talk about until you get in with a bunch of other HF people and do that, which is one of the things I quite like about it. It's quite good fun.
Yeah, it is quite a small space. I'm operating in a 5x6 box right now. 5 foot by 6 feet. For you, I'm not sure what that is. That like 1 meter by like 0.9 meters or something? I don't know. Feet to meters.
No, weirdly, we will do. So I'll measure in both feet and meters depending on what I'm doing. So height we generally talk in feet. So I'm 6'2".
Oh, you're tall.
The cabin I'm in at the moment, I spec this out in meters for some reason, but all the boards are 6 foot by 3 foot boards. So yeah, it's interesting depending on, because we obviously measure distance in miles, but we will measure if speed is miles per hour, but if you're going running or doing any sort of exercise, you're doing kilometers. If I'm doing woodwork, depending on what I'm doing or just how precise I want to be, I will either use centimeters or inches. There's no it depends. Yeah, it so much depends on what it is that you're doing and how you're feeling that day as to whether you'll use all of that all the time. As to what you use, but there is a huge drive on. Well, I say huge. There's a significant minority of people who want us to go back to using feet and inches and all that sort of stuff all the time. I just don't understand why we need to go to feet and inches when you got metric because I've got 10 minutes. But,
metric makes everything easier. I'm looking at my my measuring tape here. It doesn't even have centimeters on it. I thought it did. But it is made in USA, so that probably has a lot to do with it.
Yeah, because isn't it your miles are bigger than our miles?
So I don't know. Is that true?
I think you've got American miles and Imperial miles are different. I'm fairly sure they're different. I'm going to have to Google that now, aren't I?
I'm looking it up right now. Let's see here. Yeah, the mile, sometimes the international mile or statute mile, to distinguish it from other miles, is a British imperial unit, and the U.S. customary unit of distance. Both are based on the older. Okay, so U.S. survey. Okay, very slightly differently. The difference is so small that in practice it makes no difference unless you are a surveyor or scientist. So yes, they're different. Yeah, I guess yes, we are scientists. Okay, I'll give you that one.
Yeah, only just. I thought it was more than what it was, but because I believe our inches are the same. But then what else? Because what?
Did that article say anything about measuring inches in the? All right, actually, we made it through the show. I feel like we've earned a couple jabs.
The one thing in the article I still can't quite get my head around, in amongst everything else, is the getting undressed while you're driving. Sexual activity aside, that whatever, but can imagine trying to drive and get undressed at the same time.
Right. Well, that's why they called it a complex nested task. Because
that's true, but it's also just like, yeah. It is complex, and I guess you would be nested afterwards.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, it also depends heavily on what you're wearing too. Like, I'd imagine overalls are a lot.
If you're in shorts and a t-shirt, I can see that.
Yeah. Shorts and a t-shirt, probably really easy.
Jeans, shoes, socks, underwear.
Yeah, tight pants probably be very difficult.
Yeah. And I guess what speed? I guess the other thing, did it say anything about what speeds they were doing? Because if you're doing this at 10 miles an hour,
well,
I can sort of
maybe
see that. If you're doing it at 70, like say you're on a motorway doing 70 miles an hour, then that could get exciting. I can see why that would get exciting quite quick.
That would be thrill ride. Let me do a quick search for speed because that's a great question. Let's see here.
It's only taking me an hour and 50 to come up with a good question. That's all right.
So the results additionally showed that these sexual activities were associated with reports of impaired vehicle control, such as speeding. Speeding was one of the
was on that tick list.
Impaired vehicle control. Yeah, it's it's not on the. So there's only one mention of speed in this entire document. Maybe
they're just slow and steady.
Wow. Okay. No, there's a couple here. Speeding. This completion time, is that time on task? Is that something that they meant? This gendered. Oh wait, hang on. There's a gendered pattern here. Male drivers tend to engage in more risky behavior. Oh no, duh. Okay, this gendered pattern has been demonstrated. Okay, speeding is mentioned there. Where's let's see here. Access to speed. The final type of non-sexual driving behaviors involve vehicle control, though we did not have access to speed and lateral control measures. A number of proxy indicators were considered to assess proper vehicle control. So identified that the drivers neglect vehicle control when engaging in sexual activity, particularly when it comes to maintaining the recommended position of hands and steering wheel and feet in the pedal area. I don't think. Yeah, there's only 3 instances of speed in this entire document, which is kind of shocking to me.
But I can sort of see if you haven't got because normally if you're doing that sort of observation, a vehicular observation, you would have either a readout of the speed or you'd have a camera on the speed or something showing you because you'd want to correlate against it.
Right.
If you're using, I'm fairly sure that if you're shooting a porn video, the last thing you're worrying about is the angle to the speedo. You probably want other things in shot at that point, I'm guessing. So yeah, I can see why they probably wouldn't be able to work that out. Even if you had the proxies of things going past, then how do you make sure that's constant? Because people can speed up, slow down the movie, I guess.
Right.
Yeah, I was trying to put some serious thought around porn.
It's really interesting when you talk about putting serious thought around a topic like this, because I mentioned this in our lab chat earlier this week, but it was fairly obvious what we were going to talk about earlier on in the week because so many people voted for it that it was very unlikely that anything else was going to be the story for this week. And so I started getting started on the thumbnail very early this week when I did the news roundup. And I was really struggling with how to communicate this behavior without being too explicit, but still suggestive.
Yeah.
And I was really struggling with it. So ultimately what I came up with was there's an image that is the thumbnail that you probably saw coming into this. It's a woman looking into a car suggestively at a man who is driving. And that is ultimately what I came up with. But there were a couple of honorable mentions that I I don't know if I should show. It's a post show, so like
post show you can we're amongst friends.
We are amongst friends. I feel like let's see here. Where's I mean, the first one's just a bad Photoshop. The second one's like genuinely funny to me. So hang on, here's the first one. Let me get this as a source here. Yeah, this will be good fun, I think. Let's do that. Share it. Full screen. There we go. All right, so here we go. This is the first one here. I am making sure Restream. Okay, there you go. So that's the first one.
Yeah, that was never gonna hit.
That one was really bad. Here's the second one that, like I said, I genuinely had a fun time.
They look happy.
That's the point. And you can't see their lap. So That one was almost the winner, but I think ultimately what we came up with was much better. So I just want to share that because we are talking about making this a serious topic, and that was a debated subject, I guess. The other sort of suggestion from another one of our members of the lab suggested pixelating a cockpit or sort of a foggy window. I really liked both of those examples. I think those kind of get across the point too.
Yeah.
But I didn't feel like the pixelated one fit with the visual language of all the other thumbnails that we use for the channel. So ultimately didn't go with that one. The steamy window I felt was, pretty good, but couldn't find a good example of that. At least in terms of like free,
stuff. So you can, it's that whole Titanic thing, wasn't it? Of the,
Yeah, it was Titanic that popularized that concept of a steamy window with the hand running down it to indicate. Although, now that I'm thinking about it, we may have actually been able to use a screen cap from Titanic and just said courtesy of whatever picture that was and call it done, because people do that all the time. As long as you credit, right? I mean, it would be considered fair use, I think.
It was interesting because we've been on a recent project that we've just submitted. We've been playing around with this idea of putting video in rather than just a normal report. Everyone puts in reports, nobody reads reports. So we're like, how about we do some videos instead of animating some of this stuff? And we had a couple of video clips in there from films to sort of show future technologies and things like that. And we put the credit on there, credit, and they wouldn't accept it because of what it was.
Who wouldn't accept it?
Yeah, so basically the client wouldn't accept it.
Oh, they wouldn't.
Because they were like, have you asked permission to use this? And he's like, well, no, we haven't, but we've credited them. It's like say fair use and all that sort of stuff, and they just wouldn't take the risk, which was kind of fair. I'm
curious about international copyright law, because in the US we have fair use, which is if you want to get technical, we can use any sort of copyrighted material as long as it's transformed in some way. So like if we're commenting on it, right? So we would be commenting on it in that case. Criticizing it, we wouldn't necessarily be criticizing that particular thing, but parody is also another popular one that people do. And I would argue that what we're doing is not parody. I would say it's commentary, which is why we get away with, using people's posts on Reddit. It's fair use.
Absolutely.
It's commentary. And, we're crediting where credit is due. I think we only got in trouble once for that by the person who actually posted it, which really wasn't an issue. They just asked us to remove it from, their stuff because they didn't want their question. It was embarrassing for them or whatever. And they didn't want it blasted. And I get that. We should be better about asking that stuff, but really it's on the internet. You kind of agreed to that when you posted it on the internet. It's like anybody who posts, when you read such things like on social media platforms and people put these things, so I do not give permission for this platform to share any of my data. And it's like, you already did when you signed up.
As soon as you signed up, you signed up all those, you gave all those rights away. No, I didn't. This is a democracy. No, it's not. You think you get the platforms for free. You really don't. They're not doing it for fun. It's it'd be interesting because I've seen a couple of people try and set up properly free at the point of use democratic social media platforms, and they invariably fail. But because you need money to make things work.
Yeah,
true story.
Democratizing social media. That's a story for another time. Any other closing thoughts? I know it's getting late for you. I want to make sure we wrap up any last thoughts here before we jump out of here for the night.
I think we should do more, not necessarily just all around sex, but these challenging types of articles I think are good. I think they're healthy.
More sexy topics, more racy topics. Okay. I'll look for those if anyone listening, watching comes across any of those, send it our way. We will mark for consideration and certainly put it out there if it has enough human factors content for us to talk about.
Yeah, no, I think that would be good fun. We should find some. We need to find something we disagree on.
Yeah, we really do. I've had this problem with Blake too. We tend to agree on a lot of things.
We need to find something. I don't know. There must be a UK US thing or something like that. There's
got to be.
We'll find something. So there will be something that comes up at some point.
I mean, part of it's generally I'm a very agreeable person. I'm kind of a people pleaser. I don't like to upset anybody with contrarian views.
And I'm just normally right. So.
And you are normally right. See, there, I'm doing it right now. All right.
I do jest. Anyway, no, it's been a blast, and we shall see you next time.
Yeah, thanks for hanging out, everybody. We'll be back next week to talk about something else, and then also be sure to check out that Human Factors and Ergonomic Society HFES Town Hall next Friday, and we'll see you then. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a good one, everyone.